Yeah, so I guess we should just get into it since we mentioned Diddy and Cassie.
Might as well.
We might as well just get it out the way. Just again, condensed version. Everybody knows what happened at this point. Um, but if for some reason you don't know,
And you live under a rock.
Cassie sued Diddy for a large sum of money.
It was rumored to be 30 million, but we never got confirmation of that.
Yeah, and then the 30 million thing was always weird because there were also reports that she was offered by him and his team $30 million and rejected the $30 million.
That is correct.
So not really sure. That number has been thrown around, but I think that some of the details of the $30 million is confusing. Suffice it to say, she probably ended up with a lot more than $30 million. Because 24 hours after filing a lawsuit against Diddy, citing
multiple forms of abuse, multiple occasions of various abuse.
Yep, they were together over a 10-year time frame. So she cites abuse throughout the relationship. She also cites coercion, sex trafficking. There's a lot of different allegations within the suit. It was a 35-page document. So and less than 24 hours. People say 24 hours, but it wasn't 24 hours because when it came out, it was evening. It was the night before. It came out that evening. And then by morning when you woke up, by the time LA woke up, the lawsuit had been settled.
Yeah. What's interesting is information came out, and I don't know if you noticed we didn't speak about this, but information came out that actually this had been going on for 6 months prior to it becoming public fodder, public knowledge, whatever you want to say. And so it's interesting that, to me, it's interesting that it took for us to find out as a populace for things to be resolved almost instantaneously.
It's not interesting to me.
Okay, talk about it. Let's have a real conversation.
Let's have a real conversation about powerful men.
Okay. Oof, this is going to be a long pod. Yeah, I hope y'all got your popcorn.
Listen.
I hope y'all ready. You see, I ain't got a lot of coffee left, but I got my coffee.
Men with money, power, and access.
I think I was about to say respect. I was about to bust it out. Eat it live. Eat it right.
You'll sleep at night.
You know what I'm saying? You'll see the light.
No, money, power, and access. Okay? Money, infinite resources. No one technically has infinite resources, but
an abundant amount.
An abundance of resources. Power, being able to control any situation. A lot of times, because of your abundance of money, you're able to control situations. You're able to move the needle in whatever direction you need it to go. People, even if you do things that are wrong, will still let you do those things, will not hold you accountable for those things. And it could be just because they feel like they can't, or because they're just like, well, this person is in a position of power and, I serve at the pleasure. So there's that. And then access, being able to hire any high-powered attorney you want, being able to, speak to the right people, know the right people. He's not just powerful, but he could walk into pretty much any room and people know him, people recognize him, people respect him. So, and there is power in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was a notion that there was some sort of investigation that was opened against Diddy, citing harassment as well, and it seemed like it was an ongoing, I'm trying to get my thoughts together, but it seemed like it was an ongoing investigation by the NYPD. As quickly as that came out, NYPD came out and said, we don't know anything about this. Right. Now, the way that it was brought to the public was as if it was a quiet investigation. So I'm not saying that the NYPD is lying, but I'm saying it is quite possible that there's some sort of classified file on this man. Now, but that's kind of what I mean, right? Like the level of access, the level of power, the level of resources that you have dictates how people interact with you and dictates how people handle you when you do certain things. So again, this is all alleged as far as what the lawsuit cited, but I'm never surprised when people kind of back away from a situation or blindly support certain people, which I will say in this scenario we didn't see a lot of that. We didn't see a lot of people come out and just cape for Diddy.
No, we saw the opposite.
We saw the opposite, which I think is telling, but maybe I'm wrong. I think there's a lot to be said when all your friends and everybody who normally champions you kind of just runs into their corners and don't say anything. Nobody. And let's be clear, a lot of high powered people will not say anything because they don't want to get their hands dirty. But there are some that will. There are people that will still go out on a limb for you, even though they probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
So I don't know, the power and the access. I'm never surprised when things go a certain way because that's kind of how this country works. It's kind of how things work around here. You have the resources and you have the power, and people are like, oh well, that person did a fucked up thing, but it's easier to not hold them accountable than it is to hold them accountable.
Yeah, I mean that's true. What I think is interesting about all of this is once the 6 month thing came out, it really got my wheels turning. Mm-hmm. Because
sorry. There was I forgot that was how we started how I started talking about that. What I was going to say, just to really answer what I was speaking to, is that there's also a level of arrogance, some would even call it narcissism, that is associated with people who have these things about them, who have the power, who have the money, who have the access. And what happens is some of those people do not humble themselves in situations like this. Mm-hmm. And in turn will have this thought that they are invincible and they can't get into trouble, especially someone who has been doing something for decades and has gotten away with it. We saw this even with Harvey Weinstein, where, because there's also
that's a very different case though.
I'm not saying the case is the same. I was going to say we saw with Harvey Weinstein, as powerful as he is, he was denying every claim. And not only that, he was intimidating people out of outing him.
Yeah.
So I think there's this idea that because I've gotten away with it for so long, because I have the resources, because people, who are they going to believe? The woman who was trying to get on when I was the head of the label or whatever it is, versus me who was already established and had all the money and all the power and whatnot. That is the way some people think that, oh, there's no way anybody's going to believe her over me. And so that's what I was trying to get to and lost my train of thought somewhere in my flights of fancy.
Got it. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess I'll respond to that first. I don't know about the whole believing thing. Mm-hmm. It seemed that overwhelmingly people were in support of Cassie in this situation. People from Diddy's past, people that were named in this case, mm-hmm. They seem to be very supportive. The public seemed to be very supportive in this situation when it first came out. Um, and so I don't I don't know if this would have been a situation where he was able to just sweep it under the rug
Mm-hmm.
and believed or not believed. I don't know. That would have came with time, I suppose. Um, what I was gonna say is I think it's interesting that this was allowed to go on for so long,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know why you would allow this to come to the public. If you know she's about to write a book, if you know because of this Survivors Act she's able to sue you, um, and if you also know, which you have to know if you're going through this case that, or you're going through these negotiations that the Survivors Act is about to expire,
Mm-hmm.
then you have to know that this is going to become a bigger situation. I would think someone with all the power and all the resources, as you said, that they would nip it in the butt and they would try to suppress this situation, especially because of some of the things that we're seeing happen already.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that he has stepped down as the head of Revolt, and there may be more of that stuff coming because.
Macy's dropped him. Macy's dropped his clothing line.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then there was a he had a partnership with a school.
Mm-hmm.
They also severed ties.
And this is what I'm saying. So I'm not saying that what he did was right. I'm not saying that I believe him or her. I'm only speaking about um, business and branding, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, as a person as big as he is,
Mm-hmm.
and as far-reaching as he is, or can be, I guess is the best way to say it. I'm shocked that you would allow this to be something that goes on for so long and is allowed to hit the public,
Mm-hmm.
because I would think this is something you want to keep on the hush. You want to keep on the low. One, because the allegations are nasty. The allegations are really, really bad. Like, last pod that didn't come out, we sat here and went through a lot of the allegations, the details. I mean, that those things have become public, but if you look at some of the things being alleged, that's not good stuff.
No.
It's really, really bad stuff. Whether it's true or not, it's less about what happens in court and more about the court of public opinion. And as we are starting to see already, only 2 weeks later,
Mm-hmm.
things are changing rapidly. I would think as a mogul, as a businessman, as a label owner, as a media company owner, as a person who um, your brand feeds all these other brands, because that's the truth. Like Revolt, there are some big things going on at Revolt.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the biggest one is Drink Champs and what's the show?
Carisha, please.
Oh, that's what it's called? I wasn't sure if that's what it's called. I thought it was just a catchphrase. Yeah. Carisha Please and Drink Temps are two really big things that are going on there. There are other things, but even those two things are gigantic today.
Mm-hmm.
And his brand, those things fall under the umbrella of his brand, of the Revolt brand. And so
Mm-hmm.
I would think someone with all of these different things going on would say, all right, let's get this shit settled before it goes anywhere. I would think that's what you would do. So I'm saying all of that to say I'm shocked that him and his team allowed it to go on, one, for 6 months, and two, to the point that it became public. Not surprised that they got it handled quickly because, as you're saying, yeah, of course, at that point it's damage control.
Yeah, of course.
Because now, even if no one chimed in, which a lot of people chimed in, even if no one chimes in, the fact that this is public, people can seek out the document, people can see the things that are alleged, people can see that she was trying to work on the book or whatever.
You can't unsee what you've seen.
Yeah, and so this paints you in a very different light, regardless whether it's true or not. And it's something that could arguably stay on your record technically. And I don't mean record. I don't mean record legally. I mean, again, the court of public opinion.
It's a stain. No one's gonna forget this.
Yeah, so I hope, as I said last time, that these things are not true. I hope that we don't hear more of this, but it's not looking good that two new cases came out shortly after, right before the Survivors Act expired. And then we just saw a slew of cases.
Yeah, and there were thousands over the course of a year. There were thousands of cases, not only against celebrities but also against institutions like prisons and employers and anywhere you could be harassed or sexually assaulted or abused. There were a lot of cases, and again, it wasn't just celebrities, and it wasn't just institutions. There were just regular ass Joes who got sued as well. So this was a huge thing. This was far-reaching. Mayor Eric Adams was accused. Cuba Gooding Jr., Jamie Foxx. There were a lot of people. Jimmy Iovine. Yep. So and we got a list of the people we know, and because we know them. Right. But it didn't mean that it was just those people. Right. But I just wanted to go back to something you said about the fact that you're surprised that if this was going on for so long, they didn't nip it in the bud. And I think that's kind of what I'm saying. The other side to it is that I didn't say is I think that he thought, assuming all of this went the way it was presented to us, right? This is all alleged. We'll never know at this point.
Yeah, we definitely won't.
But I think he thought that she was bluffing. I think that he thought, and that's why I brought up when people have so much at their disposal, and there's a level of arrogance, and some might even argue narcissism. I cringe at the word narcissism because I feel like it's overused.
Extremely overused.
But someone with his profile would probably fit the characteristics of a narcissist, which is, why I'm using that word. But for the purpose of this conversation, we could just call it arrogance.
Sure.
It is possible that he didn't believe that she would do it, or that he believed that he could say whatever he wanted to say to her, or have his lawyers shut down and squash things that came up, send out a cease and desist on the book that she was going to write. I don't think that he thought that it would implode. I think that he probably thought it would go away. He probably thought that his legal team could make it go away. And here's the key part that I think is relevant to what you were saying. You were saying him and his team. The thing about, I was watching a lawyer speak about this very story, and something that she said that I think that sometimes when we think about these things, we think, oh, this person is huge and they have a team. You can have a team, and your team can advise you to shut the shit down.
That don't mean you gotta listen.
But the final decision is with you.
Absolutely.
And so if he was like, fuck her, like, and I don't know that he said that, but I'm just saying, for argument's sake, let's say he was just like, fuck her, she's not gonna do anything. Like, especially if you think you have that power over somebody, if all of the allegations are true, and he's someone who thinks he has that power over her and has had that power over her, why wouldn't you think that you just say, sit the fuck down, and she wouldn't?
I get it.
So I think that's why it came out. I think that they thought that they could play with her. I think that they thought that they would make her go away, or they would scare her off. And I think when she filed the suit, they were probably shocked, which is why everything happened like clockwork. They were probably shocked that she filed that suit, and more so that they couldn't control it once the suit went out. Because suits have been filed. A lawyer that I watch a podcast with a lawyer on it, and she pointed out at the beginning of the year of the Adult Survivors Act, we also saw a lot of of cases come up. We just didn't realize what it was at the time.
Yeah, because we didn't know.
We didn't know about it.
And even when they first mentioned a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago, the Adult Survivors Act, they weren't. No one really knew what that was. Right. It wasn't something that publicly we knew the inner workings of. Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody. I mean, I say anybody. I don't think generally
most
people knew what this was. Right, why does it exist? What are the details? The fact that there is statute of limitations on these types of cases.
Yeah.
And that's why this was put in place. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, I didn't know any of that. And I try to keep up with these type of things. So I don't think most people knew that. Mm-hmm. And I think that is also part of it, right? That people were just seeing all of these things coming up. I was like, oh, what's up? Because remember, 2 weeks ago when we debated, that was part of my debate. That, mm-hmm. like, why are people suing instead of trying to file criminal charges? That was a big piece of our debate because this information wasn't out yet. Right. And so that's part of why this whole conversation changes, right? Because I didn't know it was about statute of limitations. None of that was mentioned at that time. Mm-hmm. And I was standing very strongly on the fact that, like, well, why aren't you trying to lock cats up? And it's like, well, it's too late. In the state of New York, it's too late for that. So now all you can do is try to get some type of financial, I don't want to say reparations, but relief, I guess. Mm-hmm. And
it could also lead to criminal filings, which, yes, the statute of limitations is open, but now if there's an open case, mm-hmm. I heard a lawyer say this. Y'all could correct me if I'm wrong because I don't know all the legal stuff, but I believe that if, like, let's say one of these cases was to go to trial, I believe that it could lead to criminal charges to be open depending on what comes of it.
Gotcha.
So, that's not a foolproof thing, and it's not, and I don't think anybody going into it is thinking that maybe that's what's going to happen, but they, I guess you do what you can.
Guess so.
And I think the other thing too is, and then we could leave this alone, but I think the other thing too is people are always like, oh, well, one pops up and then all of these other ones come out of the woodwork. And I think people forget that how difficult it is to admit that something has happened to you or someone has done something to you.
Absolutely.
And sometimes seeing someone else say that something has happened to them, and I, it's always weird to me that people don't get this, because this happens in our own, like, regular lives with things that are not as heinous.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Gosh, every time I sometimes I walk around and I'm looking for my glasses and realize they're on the top of my head. People don't necessarily say that to you, but if you say it to them, you'll have 3 more people who sitting in the room who are like, oh my gosh, that happens to me all the time. It's a silly thing compared to what we're talking about. But
it was called Me Too.
Right, because it does spark something in you. It does make you a little bit more brave than you were, and it makes you feel like, okay, someone else experienced this. It also triggers something in you that might say, hey, other people have to deal with this too. Like, maybe if I say something, it won't continue. Maybe there's a way to stop it. I don't want other people to feel what I felt or feel right now. So I think there's a lot of that that comes into play with this stuff. It's really complicated and it's really uncomfortable to talk about. And it's one of those things that it's like, wish it doesn't happen to people, but unfortunately it does.
Yeah, it's way more common than people realize.
Yeah. So, I hate the fact that every week we turn around, we have to have a conversation about another man who has done something or is alleged to have done something like this. It's disheartening, especially when you talk about entertainment and pop culture and have to kind of reckon with it there. So
Well,
publicly,
we
but
won't have this conversation here, at least not today.
mm,
But part of that is because of the built-in, almost foundational power structure of the entertainment industry.
mhm,
And so a lot of things are based on a hierarchy type of thing
yeah,
where the person at the bottom is sucking up to the person at the top for various reasons. And knowing that, the person at the top often takes advantage and turns sucking up to sucking off.
right.
And that is something that is almost built into the foundation of the entertainment industry. A lot of quid pro quo things are part of it. You know, you hear these types of stories very often.
Mhm,
Um, and so we won't have this conversation today, and maybe not at all, but
mhm,
that's unfortunately a big part of that
yeah,
industry, whether we're talking music or film or whatever in the middle. You know what I'm saying?
mhm.
And so that is how a lot of this works.
And a lot of the OGs, if you will, also look at it. The ones that don't feel like, oh, like put them under the jail. There are some that are like, oh, that's just the way it is. There's a lot of that's just the way it is when it comes to the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
That's why when the Lizzo stuff came up, not the same, but that's why when the Lizzo stuff came up, some of the things that were being said, people were like, what are they upset about? Because there is a certain culture in the entertainment industry. Listen,
Absolutely.
I worked on the corporate side of the entertainment industry, and it was still it was still a shit show.
Yeah.
There was still a lot of the same stuff happening. A
Well,
lot
that's why I
of,
said, yeah.
you know, strange work happy hours and strange, company events, company sponsored events, and even walking through the office and the type of attention you get if you're wearing a certain dress or like there was there the lack of boundaries. um I can only imagine, like, I can safely say that nothing truly that I would consider truly heinous happened in front of me, but I don't mean it didn't happen,
Right.
and it's just, who, it's yes, you're right. That's a huge conversation. That's a bigger conversation, and that's, but it does exist and
Yeah.
has existed.
Since its inception.
Yeah, exactly. So
That's why I said it's almost foundational.
yeah.
Which is fucking sick. But that doesn't mean it's not true.
Yeah, it's gross. And I think that's the era we're entering now, where people are like, fuck that. It's slow moving. But I think with this whole Diddy thing, I don't know how slow it's gonna move at this point. And I'm not talking about him specifically. I'm just saying I think this probably sparked something that's to come. I don't
We'll
think
see.
this is the end of this conversation. But yeah, so yeah, that's that.
Well,